Hi everyone, welcome to today's presentation on study skills as part of Hello Future Live. My name is Rosa, I am the graduate intern for the West of Cumbria, and we also have Abby on the call.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby and I'm the graduate intern for the Furness area.
So let's get cracking. I will share my screen. Can you see that okay, Abby?
Yeah.
Okay, so today's presentation is on Study Well. Before we begin, we as Hello Future are part of a partnership of all of the organisations you can see on the screen right here. And we all have the shared goal of telling you and getting you guys into higher education, whether that be higher and degree apprenticeships or university degrees. So just a bit about who we are.
So the aims and outcomes of this session are firstly going to be to recognise a study style that aids effective revision for you and helps you to achieve your goals. We're all different, so what works for you might not work for your friend. We're also going to understand how lifestyle factors can impact your own education. So we're going to go through a couple of different examples and how you can overcome this. Then the final aim and outcome for today is to learn tools and techniques to aid productivity and reduce stress. And we're going to talk a little bit about some techniques that myself and Rosa used when we were in your position.
So first things first, we're just going to talk a bit about what makes up your day. Now, this is a really useful reflective activity to do when you're starting to think about what do you spend your time on during your day. So me and Abby have done this activity where we've coloured in a diagram which shows how much time we spend on each of these activities listed here. So things to consider are such like sleeping. So how many hours you're spending sleeping. So usually that's about like 8. What social media you're on and how often you're on it. So red for us was social media. So I think both of us put 2 hours for that, which let's face it, is probably an underestimate. How much you're spending on kind of things like Xboxes or PS3s or PS4s, and any other hobbies that you might have. We had a specific one for TV and films, which I put 3 hours of, and I think Abby did as well. But it also shows that the majority of your time is taken up by kind of sleeping and then also work and school. So that doesn't leave huge amounts of time for everything else. So you've got to be quite smart about how you divide that time up.
So we've talked a little bit about revision, and you might have heard that a little bit from your teachers or at school, people throwing around this word revision, but what does it actually mean? So revision should be just going over things that you already know and really consolidating that knowledge. It shouldn't be learning everything from scratch. However, you might have a lot of different subjects and be preparing for a lot of different exams. So some of the things that you might come over in your revision, you might be like, oh, I don't remember learning this, and that is okay. But a top tip here is just really make sure that you understand everything to the best of your ability. So whilst you're in school or whilst you're in college, if you have questions, then ask your teacher, your tutors, your friends, and just really make sure that you are understanding as you go along.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the reasons why we don't revise. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to go through each of these reasons and give you some examples of how you can overcome them. So it might be that you find subjects too boring. So I know this might especially be the case if you're still doing a wide range of subjects. So not all of them might be things you enjoy. It could be that you get distracted, which I think is a very common one. I think as well, especially for kind of younger generations where we've grown up with social media, we've grown up with technology, our attention spans are a bit rubbish. So trying to find ways of keeping your attention on one thing, trying to find ways of focusing is really, really important to make sure you can revise effectively. We've also got too tired. So this is common about not getting enough sleep, which can also lead to another reason about feeling stressed. If you're feeling stressed, it might be more difficult to get to sleep. It might also be more difficult to focus if you're just kind of preoccupied with all the stress that you might be feeling. And then the final one is being a procrastinator, which I think both me and Abby can agree we've both found difficult during studying. So again, we're just going to talk through some tools of why this might be and how you can combat it. So the first thing that we're going to look at is if you find subjects too boring. Now, it might be that the best thing to do is just to switch things up. So this could be to try and work in groups or pairs rather than just sat in your room or in a library just by yourself trying to work on things. Try and do things in pairs or in groups, so you can do quizzes with each other, you can talk through practice answers and stuff together. You can use different revision tools, so mind maps, use, like I said, quizzes, using revision cards or podcasts or things like that, to really try and broaden your understanding. And finally, also do some wider reading. This is really useful if you feel like you've covered the main aspects of the topic, but you're still not quite getting things. Using resources such as YouTube or Google, even just to Google random questions you might have about that topic, or look up a lot of YouTubers do explanation videos for different topics, and they can be really helpful for trying to reframe something that you might not have found that interesting in a slightly more interesting light.
So one way that you can switch things up a little bit is by using the Quizlet app. So the Quizlet app allows you to make study sets that you can revise from, and it can allow you to learn in a different way. So by doing quizzes or playing games to help you memorize things. And this app is really good because you can make them yourself. You can make them in a group. So maybe you and a couple of friends work together to make a study set, or you can use pre-made study sets that are already on the app. So this app is really good because you can use it anywhere you are. So if you're going on a car journey, maybe you're going out for the day with your family, you can do a little bit of revision in the car just to pass the time. So Quizlet is really good as well because a lot of students who have used it have found that it's really increased their grades. So it's a really good resource to start using if you are not already.
So if you are someone who would say that they're a procrastinator, then I think a key thing that we've talked about is being realistic. So if you know that after about 20 to 25 minutes, you're going to start thinking, oh, maybe I need to tidy my room, or, oh, it's been a long time since I watered the plants, or something like that, just as an exercise to get you to stop working. Plan that time in. So say that you're going to use what we call the tomato timer technique, and plan in 5-minute breaks for you to go around and do a little bit of tidying, or for you to go and water your plants, or do whatever it is that you usually do as your main method of procrastinating, because this will mean that you're able to kind of work that around studying. Also, do try and revise on work in a place where there are fewer distractions. So if you're able to work in a quieter area, if you're able to work in an area that doesn't have lots of other things going on around you, that might be helpful as well for making sure that you're not being distracted by other activities happening around you.
So you might see the title of this slide and think, watching cat videos can make you more productive? Well, a psychologist in Australia did a study where he found that watching videos unrelated to work actually can increase your productivity. This kind of links to what Rosa has been saying about the tomato timer technique. So in this experiment, the psychologist got two groups of people, and he made one of them watch a 5-minute funny cat video, and the other group watched some business related videos. After watching the video, they were given a task where they had to circle all the letter T's in an article. And the group that had watched cat videos were much better at finding the letter T's than the ones that had watched the business related videos. This really just shows that to be productive, you need to give your brain a little bit of a break and do something unrelated for a while to get you back in that productive mood.
So kind of moving on from this and leading on from it is the fact that oftentimes it's quite difficult to stay focused on one thing, and oftentimes people get distracted. So a really nice way to kind of help yourself with this one is to create your environment and surround yourself by things that are going to help you to focus. So revising where you feel most relaxed. So again, like I was saying before, not in a loud space, in a calm space where you're able to properly focus. Also use study playlists on YouTube. So they have loads of playlists on there that are kind of chilled study beats kind of things, which are really useful to get you into the right mindset to revise. I will say, I know from my own experience that sometimes when it comes to creating your environment, you can spend a long time curating the perfect playlist, or making sure that your water is constantly full, or, you know, finding the perfect scented candle to have whilst you're trying to revise and things like that. So don't spend too long on it, because then it can just become another method of procrastination. But do try and find those different ways where you can really make sure that you're in the best environment possible. Keeping hydrated is really important, and there are apps such as My Water Balance which you can use to make sure that you're staying on top of that. And also you can monitor your screen time on your phone if that is a big distraction, which I know personally for me definitely was and still is. So really try and make sure that you're able to limit that as much as possible to make sure you can properly focus and get your work done.
So leading on from what Rosa said about your phone potentially being a distraction and monitoring your screen time, one thing that is really important to know is that apps are designed to get your attention. So are you someone that has lots of notifications on your phone? The little red notification symbol is there to catch your attention and to make you want to go on it. And as well, something that is quite important to know is that the way apps are laid out, for example, Instagram, you will never get to the bottom of your feed because it's got an endless scroll. So you can scroll and scroll and scroll, and that's to keep you on your phone. And it shows that it's a really big distraction. However, there are some useful apps that can help you revise. So one of them is Quizlet, which we've already talked about, but the second one is the Forest app. And this is an app that I personally used to help me study. And the Forest app, basically what it does is it allows you to set a timer. So for example, 20 minutes. And in that 20 minutes, you will not be able to unlock your phone. So it'll silence all your notifications, so you won't get distracted and everything will be silent. And if you reach the end of that 20 minutes, then a little tree will show in your forest. However, if you unlock your phone, then your tree will die. And this sounds quite brutal, but it was something that really helped me when I was revising. And it also lets you kind of see how much revision you're doing. So you can see, oh, so I did 4 blocks of 20 minutes today, and you can monitor your revision that way as well. So it might just be quite helpful for you guys.
So now we're going to move on to talk about the issue of feeling stressed and feeling sometimes almost too stressed to revise. And it sounds counterproductive, but the best thing to do if you're feeling stressed is just to take a break. Try and do something that you enjoy. If that's a hobby you have, such as playing an instrument, or even, you know, going on your Xbox and playing a game for half an hour or something like that, just do something to clear your head and get your mind off of your work. Also, trying to get some fresh air is really, really helpful. Take a walk around your block, take a walk around the school or something like that. Just get out of your building, just to make sure that you're kind of able to take in some deep breaths and able to remember that the world is not simply your exams. There is a lot else out there, and you do not need to be feeling too stressed about, you know, about the work that you're doing. Also, making sure you're getting enough exercise. So at least 30 minutes 3 times a week is recommended. Again, just to get your body moving, to get yourself thinking about something else. And finding other calming activities, which we're going to move on to now. Things that you find relaxing, things that help you to unwind, that means that you can remember that, again, your exams are not the be all and end all. It's okay to have other things that you enjoy, and you should definitely have a lot of other things in your life that you are enjoying, even whilst you're revising. So we're now going to talk a little bit about how we personally dealt with exam stress. Here are some things that we did. We should probably just say before we get into discussing these that this is not an exhaustive list. There are so many other things that you can be doing, and definitely try and find things that work for you. But here are some things, and here's, you know, we're just going to talk about our experiences in the hope that maybe there might be something there for you. But do remember that you might think all of these things are a bit rubbish, but just go and try and find things that work for you. So Abby, what were some ways that you found useful for dealing with exam stress?
Well, I think the first one is something that you've already touched upon a little bit, is making sure that I was getting regular exercise. I would try and book myself onto a gym class or go to the gym give myself a bit of a break from revising and to get out of the house. Whilst I was at uni, I lived about half an hour away from the library where I revised. So I'd make sure that I was walking there and back to get some fresh air and just really prepare me for starting my work. And as well, something that I think is really important is making sure that you still see people. I think in an exam time, it's really easy to keep yourself up in your room or in the library and just sit there and just think, I've got to work, work, work. But it's really important that you are still going out and being social and giving your brain that time to relax. What about you, Rosa?
Yeah, I'd really agree with both of those points. I would also say for me, a useful thing that I found for taking breaks were short TV programs. A lot of sitcoms run for about 23 minutes. I watched the whole of The Office during writing my dissertation because episodes were only 20 minutes. So it was really useful. If I did 40 minutes of work, I'd then watch an episode of The Office for 20 minutes and it would just fully take me out of it. Even I used to watch cartoons like Adventure Time. That's a really great show for just sitting there and being literally a completely different world to whatever's going on with your revision. I'd also say changing up your revision. So working in different places if you're able to. That was difficult and might still be difficult if we have to go back into any kind of lockdown. That it was difficult for trying to change up where you were revising and how you were revising. But now, if you're able to go to a different library, maybe go and work at someone's house, just try and vary how you're revising, because that will also mean that you're not always associating it with one place and it doesn't just feel like you're kind of in like a little, prison or whatever, because I definitely felt like that sometimes during lockdown, because if you're just in your room, that can become quite difficult.
So the last barrier that we are going to cover today, which is by no means the last barrier that there may be to your revision, but the last barrier that we're going to cover is if you are too tired. So how much sleep do you really need? And if you're anything like me, you probably sit in bed and you go to bed thinking, oh, I'm going to get X amount of hours sleep. So new research has kind of shown that it's important to get both of the sleep cycles. So when you sleep in two cycles. The first is non-REM sleep, and that happens between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. And this is really important for your body to recover. So if there's any healing that your body needs to do or any growth, that's when that will take place. And the second sleep cycle is REM, and this happens between 3 and 7 a.m. in the morning. And this is when your memory processing sleep happens. So regardless of sleep cycles, it is recommended that people your age get between 8 to 10 hours sleep. If you're not getting this sleep, then your body cannot perform at its best. So you can't revise at your best. So one reason that you might particularly be getting bad sleep is if you're on your phone right before bed. And I'm guilty of this. I'll sit up on my phone on Facebook or watching something on Netflix, but the light that your phone emits keeps you awake because it causes a hormone called melatonin to be released. So the best way that you can maybe combat this, if you don't want to not go on your phone before bed, is by putting a blue light filter on to stop this hormone being produced and help you get to sleep a little bit easier.
So, Abby, which of these do you think were the ones you struggled with most or have struggled with in the past? Because I think we can kind of safely say that at some point, all of these will apply, because, yeah, exams are hard and revising is hard. And so there will always be these kind of barriers. But for you, which ones were the ones that you kind of had to really learn how to tackle?
I think when I was doing my GCSEs and I was doing a wide range of subjects, I think it's too boring was a big one for me, especially when it came to maths or physics. They weren't what I was interested in. I found that hard to revise because I didn't enjoy the content. But moving through my A levels and to my degree, because I'd picked what I wanted to do and I enjoyed that, I think the ones that got me then were being distracted by my phone, which is why I got the Forest app and found that really useful. But also that I was a procrastinator, that if I would sometimes try and find absolutely anything to do rather than revise, which can be a difficult one to fix. But for me, I fixed it by kind of not studying at home. By getting out, I was able to procrastinate less. What about you, Rosa?
I think I was a combination a quite rubbish combination of procrastinating and also feeling stressed, because what would happen is I would procrastinate starting revision, and then it would get to when it was quite late in the day, and then I would start to feel very stressed, and then I would be too stressed to revise, and then I would procrastinate more. So I think a thing that I learned was that by the time I got to my A levels, I was starting my revision kind of like March, April time, which isn't so useful for this exam period if you're watching this kind of in this period, but for, you know, your next exam period, just start as early as possible, because you can start just doing little bits here and there that can be really, really helpful for just setting yourself up so that when it comes to it, you know, you don't need to stress as much because you've done the work. Whereas I know for me, because I would procrastinate a lot, I wouldn't have done as much as I probably could have done. So yeah, so I'd say starting early was a thing that I really learned in my A levels and during my degree that really helped me to just kind of lower those stress levels as much as possible. They weren't gone, but they were lowered. So here are some final top tips just to kind of recap what we talked about today. So the first thing is well-being. The most important thing, no matter what exams you've got, is your well-being. So always prioritize that over any kind of staying up too late, working yourself to the bone, anything like that. No, focus on well-being, focus on getting your sleep, focus on doing exercise, focus on eating right, and focus on doing things that make you happy. The second thing is note-taking. Now, a thing to say about this is that, firstly, when it comes to making revision notes, they don't need to be the most beautiful things in the world. And I know that that is another technique I used to do to procrastinate, was I'd spend ages making my notes look beautiful, and I would only have got through like one topic in a day, and not in that much detail. So just making sure that you are taking notes that best serve you. And this is another way of setting yourself up for success. When you're in classes, take notes then, and take legible notes then, so that when you get to revision, you've got a really useful resource to go back to and look over. When it comes to things such as organization and time management, it's important to say that these are really useful skills, but they're not just useful for exams. These are things that employers are going to be looking for and higher education institutions are going to be looking for. They are things that people ask you about in interviews. And if you're able to say that when you were doing your GCSEs or your A levels, you used to make a revision schedule that you would then stick to, and evidence exactly how you performed good time management and how you were very well organized, they are things that can really help you out when you're in the job market. The final thing is wider reading. This is really useful for just making yourself feel more engaged with a topic and making it not feel as if it's just a list of words or a list of facts that you've got to learn. So I'd really recommend wider reading just to help you engage more and to help you find more enjoyment in your revision, because especially when you get into the stage of A levels and your degree, you've chosen those subjects for a reason. So if you're doing wider reading, that again will be able to show that you're really interested in that topic and hopefully help to fuel that interest. So we're just going to recap the aims and outcomes. So our first aim was to recognize a study style that aids effective revision and helps you to achieve your goals. So we've looked at ways you can study, about how you can study best to make sure that you're doing what works for you. So for example, using the tomato timer technique to do 25 minutes of revision, 5 minutes off is a really useful way of doing that. When it comes to understanding how lifestyle factors impact your own education, we've looked at things such as sleep cycles and getting enough exercise and eating right as really useful things for making sure that you're helping yourself to be the best you can be. Then finally, we've got learning tools and techniques to aid productivity and reduce stress. So this again really feeds into things like sleeping enough and eating right and getting enough exercise, but also stuff such as seeing your friends and doing what you enjoy are all really good tools and techniques to aid productivity. We've also talked a bit about apps when it comes to this, such as the Forest app and also Quizlet, which are really useful ways of helping you to be more productive. So we're now going to have a bit of a discussion between me and Abby about some of these questions that we thought might be useful for us to go through to again draw on our own experiences. Again, there's the disclaimer here that not all of these techniques and not all of the things we're going to talk about might apply to you, but some of them might. And also it's really just useful to hear from other people who've been through very similar things to what you might be going through. So Abby, the first question's for you. Do you find it easy to focus on your work?
The thing is, it can depend. It can depend on all of the things that we've spoken about today. So if I've had a good night's sleep, I'll find it much easier to focus on my work. But being able to focus is a really important skill for you guys to develop, and helping to be productive it's one of them things that you've just got to kind of learn and practice to get better at. So sometimes I still find it hard to get focused, and pushing myself to focus can be a challenge, but it's something that definitely comes with quite a bit of practice and just good discipline of trying to get into that mindset. So Rosa, what were your best strategies for stopping procrastination?
To give myself set time periods where I could procrastinate was the best thing. So one of my main procrastination techniques I remember for my GCSEs was I oh, this is not great. I learned all of the states of the US. I know. And so, but what I'd do was be like, okay, because I'd start to just do it quite obsessively. And then I was like, no, you've got to actually learn, biology. So I'd be like, okay, half an hour of biology, and then you can do 10 minutes of this obsessive hobby that I only picked up so I could distract myself from revision. Was a really useful way. So it was the tomato timer technique again. It was just allocating my time, making sure that I was at least getting some kind of revision in there before I then, learn all the states. But yeah. So Abby, how did you cope with exam stress, and do you think that that's gotten easier as you've progressed in education?
Well, I think one thing to just note here now is that exams are stressful times, and no one is denying that. So dealing with exam stress, how did I cope? I coped by doing some of the things that we've talked about now. So planning out my time, starting early, and also going out and making sure that I was getting fresh air, I was getting my 30 minutes of exercise, I was seeing people were my main ways of coping with exam stress. Has this got easier as I've progressed through education? I think it has. I think when I was doing my GCSEs, it was a new thing. I'd never really been under that much stress before to get these qualifications, and I was very nervous, very anxious. And I think as you go through to your A levels, your BTECs, whatever you decide to do next, it does get easier, and you kind of get used to that feeling, and you know how you can cope with that feeling better. So I would say yes, it gets easier as you know what to expect, because if you're doing your GCSEs now and you've never sat an exam before, you might not know what to expect, and that's stressful in itself. But also as you learn what techniques work for you to reduce that stress, I think. So Rosa, do you think studying at home has affected how you work?
I think it has. It was both a positive and a negative experience. So both me and Abby we finished our final year of university last year in the first lockdown, which meant that I wrote my dissertation during lockdown. And I know, Abby, you finished your final research project during lockdown as well, which was quite difficult in some ways. I found it quite hard because I was usually someone, and I think you were as well, Abby, that I'd go to the library to revise. That was my main place, and not being able to have that commute and having it, because I moved back in with my mum when it got to lockdown, which meant that where I worked was like 2 meters away from where I was sleeping. I was working in my bedroom, which was really rubbish for me because I was really used to being able to have my work life and my home life quite separate. But at the same time, I'd say it was really useful because, luckily enough, my mum has dogs, and I was really lucky that I was able to have them and take them for walks and look after them a lot, which meant that just was really useful for me for having something outside of work that I had to do in a day. You can't just leave a dog, so being able to take them for walks and do stuff with them was quite useful for me. How did you find it, Abby? Because I think this kind of affects both of us equally.
Yeah, I would say pretty similar. I like to have my bedroom as my space where I, chill out, where I watch Netflix, where I do what I want to do. And coming home and not being able to go out to the library to do my work, I found really difficult as well. But I think with that, how I kind of coped with that was my mum and my brother were both working from home at the time. So we'd all sit together. So it was kind of like having that little group that maybe you'd have at school, like when you sat next to your classmates in your lessons. I think as well, when studying at home, kind of going back to making sure that I was in communication with people, I think you did this as well, Rosa, was setting up little study groups with people that I went to uni with. So we could talk over, we'd maybe do a past paper and then come together and talk over what our results or our answers were, which was really useful. And that's something you can do whether you're working from home or you're working from uni or school or, wherever you're working. But yeah, it was definitely difficult, but I think it really helped with my independent learning and me learning by myself. I don't know if you found the same.
Yeah, definitely. It was a real test in all those skills we've talked about time management and organization, and kind of, if you're not in kind of your school environment, your university environment, whatever it is, trying to remember that, oh, I've got exams that are coming up, I've got to study, when you kind of just sat at home, can sometimes be quite difficult. So properly, finding that motivation and getting up and doing the work was, I think, a very, very useful thing to have as kind of a training, to know that you've got to be committed in that way.
And as well, linking that kind of to the workplace. Me and Rosa have started jobs during COVID and working from home. So we needed them skills of being able to be self-motivated to get up and do the work, set out our time in the workplace, because they're really important skills as you go on to employment.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is it for the main part of our session today. We really hope that you've enjoyed it and you've found some good study skills within this session. If you are wanting to find out more, then please head over to our website, which is www.hellofuture.ac.uk. And on our website, we have a wide range of resources that are all free for you to access. So some of the resources we have, you can see on screen here. So we have presentations that you can watch. We also have e-courses, which are really good. So we have a Study Well e-course if you want to find out even more on how you can study well. And if you complete the course, you get a certificate, which is recognised by the partners that Rosa told you about before. And also you can be entered into a draw to win a laptop, which is a really exciting thing to do.
And just to say that we are on all the social medias. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is @HelloFutureCCOP. It's on the screen now. And we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a like or a follow. And do feel free to get in touch with us as well. We have a chat with us function on our website, and we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to talk to you if you have any further questions. So do pop up to us on there, and we are happy to continue this conversation after this presentation. Thank you very, very much for listening. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Bye.